Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by William J. Scott, author of The Culture Fix. William, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul. Happy to be here.
Are you ready to get started?
I sure am.
All right. Question number 1. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
Well, when it comes to publishing, and I'm assuming that most first-time authors are probably going to use the Amazon platform to some degree. One of my rookie mistakes was publishing my book underneath my publisher's, footprint on Amazon. And I wish I had just established my own KDP account, that's Kindle Direct Publishing account, and launched under my own steam there, because I would have, on the day of the launch, I would have had much more visibility as to what was going on, seen the sales, and of course, getting reviews and everything, in my own account. So that was kind of the rookie mistake I made.
And what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
Well, I think most authors probably say, it takes them twice as long as they thought, maybe 3 times as long as they expected. I would say the clock and the dollars. It's you may self-publish, but it still takes a lot of time and quite a bit of expense by the time, depending on what resources you outsource. So yeah, I would say the clock and the dollars are the biggest challenges.
Well, let's talk about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launch that has worked well.
Yeah, I hope this is something new for folks, or perhaps many others have done this. But I did some research and found out that, of course, if you want to have a #1 bestseller, then you basically tap your street team, which is your friends and family. And I did that, and I did it very effectively. I actually had 200 contacts in a campaign, if you like, and I reached out to them via email and other methods, so that on the day that I launched, and by the way, because those folks all knew me, I got like an 80%, 85%, in fact, click-through rate to and a commitment from folks to buy the book on the day it came out. And that's how I managed to get #1 bestseller status in 3 categories in that week. And that worked very successfully for me.
Well, you mentioned you had an 85% click-through rate. So could you tell our audience a little bit more about that process and why it's so important?
Yeah, so clearly on that list of 200, I had people that knew me and that, were basically ready to help me. And I worded an email, and perhaps about 3 weeks before, I started courting folks and telling them what I was about and just asking for their help. And they got 2 more reminders, as well as an easy link on the day, so that they could go buy it, the Kindle version, and leave a review if they wanted as well. And so I think that appeal, and I used something that I think gets through some of the spam filters. I used a product called Reply.io. So I did get through a lot of the spam, and basically got 85 click-throughs on that. Yeah, and on the day, I was able to get sales of my books in the hundreds, which clearly put me into a good space on Amazon.
So you mentioned an 85% click-through rate. So this was out of 200 people that you reached out to?
Yeah.
So you had 170 people that actually clicked on it.
Right, which is unheard of, right?
That is quite the process, because typically, if you're lucky, you get a click-through rate of anywhere between 3 and 6%. So the fact that you've got 85% definitely caught my attention.
Yes, and my the team that I used to help me with that they'd never seen numbers like that. So I would put that success down to it being people that knew me, using a tool that didn't spam all the emails out in one go. It kind of leaked them out, during the day, and then having an appealing message there. I use people's first name in the subject line. And so, hey, Bob, won't you help me, kind of thing, in the subject line in the email. And yeah, got a lot of attention and got a lot of sales.
When you mention reply.io, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like a mail merge type of program. Is that correct?
Well, it is an email tool, but I think it adopts a different and obviously more successful strategy than some of the names that we know well that are more of a broadcast blast on that. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, and the reason I mention this is I've actually been using the mail merge program that we did for our launch for our business book, and I noticed it seemed to get a much better response versus using something just like MailChimp or Infusionsoft and some of those other services that are out there. So it sounds like the mail merge is more of a way to go with those types of programs because it seems to help with the connection and it also helps tend to get through those spam filters.
Yes, yes, and it's also a smart program. It doesn't, if people have already committed and already clicked, it doesn't, hit them again. So it's kind of respectful too, I think, of the inbox in that way. And then I should mention on the day I did nudge some folks with texts, but yeah, that was definitely a marketing strategy that worked.
Well, speaking of books, I'd like to ask, what is your favorite book, and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
Well, my favorite book, and it's not a business book, although if I had to mention a business book, I would probably mention Gino Wickman's Traction, because I consult to a lot of small businesses and people that are adopting that. It's just one of the most adoptable strategy books that I've ever worked with. But my favorite book of all time, the one that kind of sits by my bed on a regular basis, is Miracle in the Andes by Nando Parrado. I saw him speak, and I've since kind of met him a couple of times. And he just wrote a very compelling book about his adventure when his plane crashed in the Andes, and he was stuck, in the Andes for 93 days, I think it was. And then at the last minute, in desperation, when all the search parties had given up looking for this group, him and a colleague managed to walk their way out of there in kind of street shoes and shirt sleeves, and save many of the remaining other passengers that were still alive. Definitely the most impactful book in my life, and the number one thing would just be that what the human body is capable of and what the human mind is capable of, I find very inspiring. And he and his colleagues demonstrated just what we as humans are capable of in order to survive.
And for a final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
So, yes, I like this quote. So I'm going to go with something very topical that actually I heard today. I do have favorite quotes, that have carried me across the lifetime, but I'm going to go with my favorite quote today is actually one from Marianne Williamson. This morning, Paul, I was listening to her on a podcast, and this quote actually is mistakenly being credited to Nelson Mandela many times, but it's clearly her quote. And it's kind of follows on the same vein of the Nando Parrado, what I admired about Nando Parrado. So the quote is, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us." And I'm thinking about this today, Paul, because I'm thinking about many authors, because I went through a lot of self-doubt when I was going through the process of writing the book. Would it be good enough? Would people care? Would people read it? Would it get criticized, on social media? I think these are all natural fears. But in overcoming those and launching a book was just a great growth process for me, and one where, I put my little bit of magic under the light and didn't keep it in the darkness. So that's my quote for today.
Well, William, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
Yeah, so my book is The Culture Fix, and I do a lot of consulting under my company name, Culture Czars. So if people go to my website, which is, of course, www.culturezars.com, they will find a page there dedicated to the culture fix, where I talk about going from simply having core values to truly having a valued culture, which I believe is so important in a company. And I lay out my 9 deeds in 90 days. There's all kinds of free resources there too that are associated with the book and how to build a great culture in your company. And of course, the book is available, just to round out the podcast, on Kindle version and in paperback on Amazon. And again, it's The Culture Fix by Will Scott.
William, thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how you can be featured in our brand new Get Published business book, go to getpublishedpodcast.com.